sounds like a phone. There's a legend of a mysterious phone hidden somewhere here in the bowels of the British Museum. And the story goes that when there are enough children with questions about history, it appears on a curator's desk. So I wonder which curator it's going to appear for today.
Hello, this is the British Museum. How can I help?
Hi, I am Isaac. Can you tell me how long did the Roman Empire last and how big was it?
Oh, that's a really good question. I'm Carolina and I'm a curator of Roman archaeology here at the British Museum. So I guess there's probably going to be a lot of questions about the Romans today. The ancient Romans lived around 2,000 years ago. When we think about the ancient Romans, we may think about the Roman Empire and all the vast amounts of land that they conquered. But before it became an empire, ancient Rome was originally ruled by kings. This meant that normally the son of the king would take over as the next king or ruler, until it became a republic, meaning that its leaders were mostly elected, or that is to say, chosen. Don't let this fool you into thinking that Roman elections were fair, though. Those elected, or chosen, had to be from the oldest and richest families. But around the year 31 BC, everything changed and Rome got its first emperor, Augustus. The Roman Empire was so huge it covered most of Europe and stretched from the Iberian Peninsula, modern-day Portugal and Spain, up to the British Isles, across to the Middle East, and down into the deserts of North Africa. The Roman Empire may have had between 50 to 90 million people, which at the time could have been about 20 to 25% of the world's population. Hello, British Museum.
I'm Aisha. What were the names of the Roman emperors?
Okay, Aisha, are you ready for this? I have them written down here. Augustus, Tiberius, Caligula, Claudius, then Nero, Galba, Otto, Vitellius, Vespasian, Titus. Okay, I give up. There were a lot of Roman emperors. In the time that the Roman Empire endured in Europe, we had maybe even hundreds of emperors. In fact, it was a dangerous game being a Roman emperor. We had 2 Roman emperors that only lasted for 22 days. Greece and Rome study room.
Hi, I'm Naseba. What did the Romans do in their free time?
What a good question, Naseba, but it's actually very difficult to answer. Archaeology gives us some interesting insights into what Romans enjoy doing in their free time. When we excavate Roman towns and houses, we find all kinds of objects that they used in their day-to-day. The Romans were just like us, and they loved their free time. They liked to spend time with their friends and their family. I'll show you some of the best, or actually some of my favorite objects that we have in our collection. This object is one of the famous Vindolanda tablets. Vindolanda was a fort in the north of England where soldiers and their families and other military communities lived. Archaeologists have found many tablets just like this one at the site. These tablets are made of wood and they were written on by Romans, just like sheets of paper. This is one of my favorite tablets because it's a birthday party invitation. A woman named Claudia Severa is inviting her friend, who is named Lepidina, to her birthday party. What's really special about this invitation is it's actually the oldest surviving birthday party invitation in the world, and it's the earliest known female handwriting from Britain. We even know that Claudia Severa's birthday is on the 11th of September, and I love that we know that. People in the ancient world also like to play games. Here's a child's toy sword. These are dice that were used to play board games and gamble. We even know that some Romans liked to cheat. We know this because archaeologists have found weighted dice, which almost always roll 6s. It's very naughty. Romans would also attend local events in arenas, which were not too different from our modern stadiums. The most famous one in the ancient times was called the Colosseum, and it was in Rome. But they had many others in Roman towns which could seat hundreds and sometimes even thousands of people. They would watch sports, gladiator fights and beast fights, which were a lot more gruesome than anything we would get in our stadiums. Finally, another very Roman way of passing the day was in a bathhouse. Most Romans would have used public bathhouses where they would meet up with their friends and bathe in warm water. These were popular places, especially in winter, because they had central heating. The bathhouse floors were built on top of hypocausts. This left a gap underneath the floor where the heat of the furnace could go up. The walls were built with hollow tiles called box flue tiles, so the warm air could travel through the walls and warm the rooms and the pools. Hello, Carolina speaking.
My name is Elizabeth, and I want to ask, how did daily life in ancient Rome differ between citizens and slaves?
Hey, Elizabeth. If you lived in the Roman Empire, you were either a citizen, a non-citizen, or a slave, and life could be extremely different for each. I'll explain it further. If you were a citizen, you had the full protection of the Roman law. You could get the best jobs and you'd probably get paid better, and you could even become a politician, for example. If you were a non-citizen, you didn't have all these rights, but you did have paths towards becoming a citizen. The most popular way to become a citizen was to join the army. After 25 years of service, yes, that's a whole 25 years, you and your family would be given citizenship, and you'd get a military diploma so that you could prove that. And your children would grow up with all those privileges, if you didn't die first. However, life was very different if you were a slave. Enslaved people in Rome could be born into slavery, or they could even be sold into slavery when they were children, and it would have been a very hard life. Many slaves were brought from conquered territories from all over the empire. This meant that they were moved across the known world to strange places with different weather and food and, of course, even a whole new language. Enslaved people in the ancient Roman world had no rights at all. They were considered the property of those who owned them. The enslaved couldn't even own any property, couldn't even get married. Hello, Department of Greece and Rome.
Hello, my name is Rayan. Did Romans eat junk food like pizza?
Well, Rayan, you may have seen in the news recently that a very recent discovery of a fresco in Pompeii reveals that they did eat pizza. This might even be the oldest image of pizza in the world. Now, if you were wealthy, you could afford to eat special, rare types of meat, what we would call delicacies. As a Roman, you might even like to eat the delicacy of a dormouse. Yes, they did eat mice. But they also season their food with something called garum, which is a sauce made from rotting fish. It actually did add a lot of flavour. Oh, another one. Hello, this is the British Museum.
My name is Adam, and I want to ask, where did the Roman soldiers go to the loo?
I think this might be one of my favourite questions, Adam. Roman towns and forts had public bathrooms for the people who lived there. These are sometimes called latrines. They could be different sizes and they were found in different buildings, but they were most often found next to the bathhouse. The latrines had seats with a hole through them on a large bench, but there were no cubicles or doors, so you couldn't get any privacy and you'd probably be sitting next to someone else who was also going to the bathroom at the same time. Might even have a nice chat, actually. There was no toilet paper either, so Romans used sponges that were attached to sticks for wiping, which was also shared. Of course, if you were very rich, it was different. You could have your own private bathroom, probably even in your house, or you might use a chamber pot, which your servants would have to empty and you wouldn't have to worry about. In our collection, we have one of the fanciest toilets I have ever seen. It's a Roman toilet, but it was made to look like a Roman chariot. Hello, this is Carolina. How can I help you?
Hello, my name is Tasmia. I'd like to know what language did the Romans speak?
That's a really interesting question. There was actually one official language that was used in Rome, and it was used on important documents. It was also the language used by the Roman army, and that was called Latin. The Roman Empire covered such a large area, it included numerous different languages. Even within the same family, there might have been several languages spoken. Many people in your school, for example, might speak different languages if they have parents who come from different places. Hello, British Museum.
My name is Annabelle, and I want to ask, how did a Roman get chosen to be in the army?
That's a good question, Annabelle. The Romans didn't normally force their citizens to join the army, what we would call conscription. Most of them would volunteer to join. But the army did have strict rules for who could serve as a soldier. The first and the simplest rule was height. There was no age limit, so even children could join the army, but you did have to be a certain height. Recruits had to be at least 5'10" in Roman feet. Now, Roman measurements were a little different from ours, so this would be closer to 172 centimeters. Thankfully, I'm too short to join the army. Hopeful recruits also needed to provide a letter of recommendation to be allowed in. If you wanted to join the elite Roman legions, not just any letter would do. It needed to come from someone important, and it needed to say some very good things about you. After they volunteered to join, the recruits would have to undergo grueling training. They needed to be very strong and very fit to succeed. But that wasn't all. Recruits needed to learn discipline. This meant a soldier needed to take orders and follow rules, which meant they would need to learn how to follow rules in battle. And when the ancient Romans were in battle, they would do certain things to help them win. The most famous of these was the Roman battle formation called the testudo, or tortoise. This was a type of shield wall used by the Roman legions. Soldiers protected themselves with shields, creating a protective cover, a little bit like a tortoise shell. If soldiers were of a similar height, it made it a bit easier to do. Anyone who could not keep up with this training or follow these rules would be sent back home. So there you have it. 4 things the Romans needed to join the Roman army. Hello, this is the British Museum. How can I help?
My name is Marcel, and I want to ask, how much did a Roman soldier earn?
Well, Marcel, it all depended on what role they had in the Roman army and even how long they spent in the army or if they could get a promotion. Provided you could read and write, you could be promoted into lots of different roles. I'll give you some examples. The Roman legionaries in Britain at the time of Hadrian's Wall would have earned about 300 denarii a year, while the auxiliaries, who were non-citizen soldiers, would have earned about 250 denarii a year. Some soldiers rode horses during battle. This is called a Roman cavalry. Roman cavalrymen were considered very skilled and very impressive, and they even put on parades. They would wear amazing helmets with face masks that look almost like theatre masks. This is the Ribchester helmet, which would have been used by a cavalryman in Britain. Roman cavalrymen also had to pay for their horses' care and food, so they got an extra 50 to 100 silver coins a year. Hello, this is the History Hotline.
My name is Adam, and I want to ask, did women serve in the Roman army?
Thank you for that question, Adam. Women were actually not allowed to be soldiers in the Roman army, but they did spend a lot of time with the soldiers. Soldiers sometimes travelled with their families, so they brought along their wives and their children. Enslaved people would have also travelled and worked for the soldiers, and that included men, women, and children. There was one very famous woman who travelled with her husband and his army. And this was the Empress Julia Domna, who was the wife of the Emperor Septimius Severus, and he was actually the first emperor of African descent. She travelled and camped with her husband and his soldiers. In fact, she was so popular in the camp that she was given the title of Mater Castrorum, which is Latin for Mother of the Camp. This was such an important part of her public image, it was even minted on her coins. Now, if you think her hair looks a little weird, it's because she wore a wig over her hair. Soldiers had to crop their hair to avoid getting lice when they were living in such close quarters and camping out together. We think it might even be possible that Julia Domna did the same so she wouldn't get lice. Well, those are some really great questions. Thank you. Wonder where the History Hotline's going to go next.
Oh, is it that phone again?